Okay, so we are now on the Insta360 X3 as well as the GoPro Hero 8, and I wanted to see the differences between these two in terms of quality. What I can see, at least from looking at the screens, is that the Insta360 looks a little bit better, and it does have a slightly bigger sensor, but not something that's tremendous. But yeah, I wanted to see the differences between these two, and especially in something that's a little bit lower light as well. What I did notice was that on the Insta360 X3, or I'm just going to refer to it as the X3, is that the max ISO you can go to is 3200, and the max ISO you can go to on the GoPro is 6400. So I have that currently set as the max for the GoPro so that there's not a ton of distortion or a ton of grain in the actual video. So I'm gonna turn off this light here to see what that particular low light is. And I'm recording both in 4K 30 frames per second, and I'm also on the X3, I'm on single lens mode, so it's not recording a 360 camera. Okay, I'm now recording this in log mode on the X3, and I have this in the flat profile of the GoPro Hero 8. And just from looking at these side by side, looking at the screens, I can see a ton more grain in the GoPro Hero 8. I don't really see any grain in the X3 to my knowledge. So that's something to note. Okay, something to be clear about with these cameras is that they're both action cameras, or I guess the Insta360 X3 is a action camera as well as a 360 camera. But something of note here is that they both have a ton of grain. I think the screen on the X3 is probably a little bit better than the GoPro, but in general, when reviewing the footage in the low light scenarios, and honestly in this entire video, there's grain throughout the entire thing because the lighting scenario is really poor for a small sensor. So with a sensor like this, which is just one light here in the same room, you're not getting really any grain. But again, full frame versus these smaller sensors, you're gonna have an issue in low light. So this is really just seeing the differences between the two, and in action camera mode or the one lens mode on the Insta360 X3 is just the same as in a model that's 3 versions old in the GoPro Hero 8. So just looking at that, the newer versions of the GoPro will probably perform a little bit better. But again, the sensor sizes are just getting a smidge better. So don't really fall for the marketing aspects of it. Try them out, test them, see if you like them. Really what's going to make a difference is a big change in the sensors. So like if you move from a half-inch sensor like in the X3 to like an APS-C sensor, or a half-inch sensor to a full-frame sensor, you're going to see a big jump in those. And the quality in low light is going to be much better when you're using larger sensors. Hence, more light. So just an FYI. When you're looking at the actual screens, it may not be something that you're particularly like seeing. But yeah, this is a pretty low lit room at the moment. You have that light on there, and then this light on here. So how's the exposure? Also, how's the audio? At the moment, you can set the audio to be directionally set in the X3, but on the GoPro, you sort of have like one setting, but you can change it to like when on, off, and you can also change it to auto versus wind reduction, as well as direct focus and also stereo. Right now we're in the direct focus and seeing what that sounds like, and we can switch also to the stereo mode as well. But this is what that footage looks like. We can also turn off echo, turn off desk light.
Okay.
So we can see here grain in both pictures, but which one looks better? From what I can see, it looks like the GoPro has a different what is it called? It has a different white balance at the moment. Both of these are on auto, so the color science in terms of what they use in low light situations and stuff like that may be different. Okay, so we were just in max on the X3 and we were in super view on the GoPro Hero 8. I'm just going to call it the 8. So talking about the field of view, you can see the X3 definitely has a wider field of view. You can see my leg here versus in the GoPro you can't really see that. And yeah, we can switch between the different modes here. When you're shooting 4K for the GoPro, you only have a certain selections, and it's less than you would normally. So we're going to switch to the different views again. Okay, so we are now in narrow on the 8, and we are on wide on the X3. So this is what that looks like. And then I'm going to switch over to the linear mode on the X3. And on the GoPro, I had to switch to 2.7K, 30 frames per second, to get the narrow mode on it. So if you're looking at these side to side, you can see that the linear mode on the X3 covers much more area than the GoPro. So what I'm gonna also do, since the GoPro just has the stabilization set, so at the moment I have it hyper smooth all the way up. So what I'm gonna do is also change that so that I can get a similar field of view. Okay, so I switched off of stabilization on the GoPro, so you might see a little bit more wobbliness in the stabilization of the GoPro. And on the X3, all of that is sort of post-production. It does not really allow you to select this when you're in the menus before you record. Okay, testing again. We are now set on the X3 on max view. It's FOV, field of view plus. And on the GoPro, we are on the super view with 0 stabilization. So this is as wide as you possibly can get. And looking at the field of view, let's see. Yeah, the X3 is still getting a little bit more of the field of view. It's just a little bit more. But yeah, this is what you can expect. Also for this, you have to move down to 2.7K for the X3. I'm not entirely sure why this is the case, but yeah, that's what you can expect.